Okay, so this is basically the 4 best budget decks in the game. They're going to go in order from best to worst, and I'm going to tell you kind of why they're better than some of the other ones and why they're just good in general, and how you can make them even cheaper, because all of these lists have 1, maybe 2 legendaries, but you can replace them moderately easily. In some of the cases, you can replace them very easily with cards that are like do the exact same thing. In other cases, you're gonna have to replace them with a card that does something different but makes up for another weakness in the deck. But I'll go over all of that at least a little bit with you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy. If there are any decks you think I missed, please tell me. I did actually take Zoolock off the list because I can't really support it anymore. I think that it was a decent budget deck, but ever since the nerf, this is just a quick disclaimer, ever since the nerf to Scrap Imp, even before the nerf to Scrap Imp, I think that Zoolock was mediocre and passable, but like I just don't think that it cuts it anymore, in my opinion. And you'll probably get the sense of why when I explain why I don't like some of the other decks, say like Spell Druid, because it relies on like one specific card to ramp you up and get you pressure. But Spell Druid is much better than Zoolock, so I did include Spell Druid. Fun fact. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the list. If there are any decks you think I missed, please tell me. And if you like what I do, please like, comment, subscribe, and all that. So hope you guys enjoy. Let's jump into it. Oh yeah, and if there's anything I can do to improve the content for you guys, please let me know. I want to be as good as I possibly can for you. But if you already like my content, feel free to subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoy the games. I have had an absolute blast with this deck. I think I am 6-1 with this deck overall, and I think that even though the sample size is smaller than my Face Hunter deck, I think that I can safely say this is the best budget deck in the game right now. That's what I fully committed to. I think that this is now the best budget deck in the game. Yes, you do kind of need 1 legendary anchor in order to draw some cards, but if you don't have it, you can run an extra 1-drop like Worgen Infiltrator. You might be wondering why Worgen Infiltrator. Well, you want a consistent turn 1 play, so very often Worgen Infiltrator will get damage. You can run the Blazing Battle Mage as well if you want, or you can try to look for some sort of card draw. I'm not sure if there's anything that you can really get out of this. Maybe a Slam if you really want to push it, but Anchor, you kind of need it for the card draw for sustainability. But let's see here. Pretty much the deck is you just play minions, then you play weapons, you hit face with weapons every single turn. You actually kind of use the minions to control the board a little bit so you can hit face with your weapon without having to worry about it, and then you just win. And then if you run out of weapons, although you have Anchor, Livewire Lance, Arcanite Reaper, and 2 Corsair Caches to draw said weapons, you have the Horde Pillager to re-equip them as well. Like, you will almost always have a weapon equipped. You have good early game, especially if you play a Pirate with a Parachute Brigade. Like, the tempo with this deck is just incredible. It's honestly great. And then you finish them off with Corcoran Elite, Mortal Strike, and again, more damage with weapons and or Heroic Strike. Like, this deck just flows really, really well. Another thing that you could do if you take out the Anchor is put another Ironbeak Owl to get over some taunt minions, or another South Sea Captain to pump the pirates that you have on board. And that's pretty much it. The deck is very good. The deck is very budget, and I would recommend the deck to pretty much anybody who wants to start climbing for the next season. Okay, so although Face Hunter is no longer literally number 1, I think that it is easily the number 2 budget deck in the game, and I'm just going to jump into how to make the deck more budget because I do realize I have 2 legendaries. 1, Thalnos, pretty much a 1-for-1 trade with Kobold Geomancer. Like, almost every single time it's going to be the same for you, because you want to use it for the spell damage and they're the same cost. There are a couple of times when you play Blood Mage Thalnos earlier on to kill like Demon Hunter minions with a Rapid Fire Arcane Shot, so the card draw helps you refill your hand. It's a little nice, but like 95 to like 97% of the time they're exactly the same, so it's a very easy trade. Then Dragonbane, on the other hand, is a little bit more difficult because it's harder to replace. I'd replace it with another secret, potentially, like a Pack Tactics, rather than another Misdirection, maybe a Freezing Trap. And that's basically what I would replace this with for a little more synergy with the Phase Stalker. In fact, I already feel a little bit weird having so little synergy with the Phase Stalker that if I ever feel like the Burrowed Scorpion doesn't work, I might throw in another secret just in case. I do like this card, by the way. It can deal damage to face, because it doesn't just say to a minion. so it can be a little bit of extra push. It's a beast, which means that it helps with the kill command potentially, wherever that is. Boom. And if it gets the stealth and deals with an enemy minion, like I said, you use some of these spells to deal with aggressive Demon Hunter decks sometimes, or Hunter decks. It gets stealth and can hit for a lot of damage the next turn. So it's a very, very good card. Although if I do take it out, I'll probably put in another Secret. And Dragonbane, if you have to take it out, put in a Freezing Trap or a Pack Tactics. You basically just play on curve. You want to hero power literally every single turn that you can. If it's ever a choice, actually it'll never be a choice. You basically play on curve 1, 2, 3. And then starting turn 4, you try to play a 2-drop hero power. Turn 5, you 3-drop hero power. Turn 4, you 4-drop hero power. Turn 7, dump the rest of your hand hero power, and that's about it. So after turn 3, you want to hero power every single turn if you can, because that's how you maximize damage. And that's about it. I hope you guys like this deck. It's personally my favorite, and we'll just jump on to the next one. Murloc Paladin. Murloc Paladin is probably the 3rd best budget deck in the game. You can make more budget by taking out the Murloc and putting in Toxfin for a little bit of extra removal. And if you don't have Scale Lord, that's difficult, man. But if you don't have Scale Lord, you can probably just run a Blessing of Kings if you want to pump up a minion and keep going face with it. That's viable. It's not as good, but it still goes at least decently. And I will admit that this deck, the only reason why it's behind the other two is even though it can theoretically be just as powerful, if not more powerful, if you ever lose control of the board, you lose. Warrior has weapons to do more damage, and Hunter has spells and hero power to do more damage. This one only has the minions, really. Like, you do technically have a weapon, but that's not a lot. So your win condition is only board. So if it gets wiped, you're in a bit of a predicament, but that's what you gotta do when you're playing a budget deck. You have less win conditions than, say, a more built deck with a ton of legendaries. That being said, though, if the deck snowballs and you have the Cold Light Seer turn 3, you pop off. It's insane. The Angling Rod gets you some decent resources that can carry you at least through the mid game. And you do have one late game win condition with Murloc if you happen to keep it by playing a giant 8-drop Murloc that summons 4 other Murlocs with Divine Shield. Sorry. So honestly, the deck is still really good. The only reason why it's not as good is because even though it snowballs harder and can win better, in my opinion, I think that you lose control of the board and you lose harder too. So it's a little more volatile, and if you lose the board, you just absolutely lose the game. But if they don't, you just win, and there's nothing they can do against your ridiculously sized Murlocs. Like, don't let this make you think that this is a bad deck. It's actually insane. It snowballs super hard, and you can win the game on turn 5 without too much of a problem. And let's just jump into the last one. The last one is Spell Druid. You might say that Spell Druid is potentially better than a couple of these other decks and win conditions, but personally, I just don't like it because you kind of need ramp. Like, none of these other decks basically say if you don't draw one of these 3 cards on curve, pretty much, you lose. But this deck does. Like, some decks you could potentially win, especially if you have a really good hand to complement an exotic mount seller. But a lot of the time, if you don't ramp up, you just lose. Especially if you're in aggro. If you're in aggro and you don't have overgrowth or at least wild growth on curve, just concede. Like, you just lose the game. So that's one of the reasons why I don't really like it. If you don't have Ysera, by the way, you can replace it with maybe like another Soul of the Forest or a Swipe to help with board production. Honestly, it's hard to replace this card because it's a late game win condition. Like, you can replace it with something like Bees also to help against aggro, but you won't have the same late game. Like, you can replace it, but it won't fulfill the same role with whatever card that you replace it with, right? So, honestly, you can get rid of Ysera for Bees or something, or Swipe to help you in aggro matchups. You want to try to keep Fungal Fortunes and Rising Winds for card draw. If you're into aggro, keep Wrath and Bogbeam too. Always try to keep these ramp cards as well as Exotic Mount Seller. The other ones, Rising Winds, Wrath, and Bogbeam, are only good situationally. Rising Winds if the matchup is slow, and Wrath and Bogbeam if the matchup is fast, along with Crystal Power as well. I forgot to mention that one, but that is also good into aggro decks. And that's basically it on this deck. I think that the deck is fairly volatile. Therefore, like, you either win hard or you lose hard. It's similar to Murloc Paladin, except Murloc Paladin, at least you play stuff every turn, so you feel better about it. I don't know. I just like the feel of Murloc Paladin better than this deck, but they have similar styles where you snowball a board really quickly, except this one is a surprise, and the other one is smaller minions but faster. But you get the point. They both have minion-based win conditions. They have no secondary win condition other than, like, Ysera, I guess, which is still minion-based if you low roll. And, honestly, the deck is good. It's just, it's hard to play, and sometimes if you don't draw right, you just lose, and it feels awful. But the deck is still great. The deck is still good. I have like a 57, 58% win rate with it over several games. In a Hearthstone replay, it's a tier 2 deck, so it's definitely good, and I would recommend playing it to anybody who wants to play a budget deck and wants to scratch that Druid itch, or has a Druid quest or something like that. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. These decks are all subjective to some extent. Obviously, they're based on my own personal statistics and things that I read on Hearthstone Replay. But I kind of mix the two to make this list. So if you don't agree with anything, please tell me. And we can maybe discuss it unless I'm busy, because I have finals coming up soon. So I might not be responding to comments for a while. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.